Hi folks, I'm the Bald Guy, and these are Bald Guy Basics. I have a video this morning that I'm really looking forward to. I don't even know what time it is. I said this morning, 10:30. I've already been out and split wood on a day that is destined for 90 degrees. I split wood until it got too hot, so I've just changed. So if it starts appearing that I'm sweating through, it's because I haven't stopped sweating. But something happened a week or two ago that set me to thinking. I run basically two saws. I run a 20-inch bar steel, a 271. And then I've got two other saws, but they are, for all intents and purposes, they're the same. One is a 211 and one is the 021. So they're basically the same saw, but okay, I run three saws. The 211 is an 18-inch bar. The 021 is a 16-inch bar, but all of those saws top out well over 10 pounds. Well, over 10 pounds. The 271, of course, is the heaviest. But a week or so ago, well, 2 or 3 weeks ago now, a local person here advertised that they had a hickory tree free for anyone who would cut it. And the hickory tree was already down. It just had to be bucked into the size pieces you want. But it was a tree with a lot of growth that split off from the main bole, the upper part of the tree. So when it came down, there's a lot of limbs that were over my head, which means as I'm sawing them up, I'm sawing high. And the thought struck me that it would be nice to have a top handle saw. Okay, so there's a thought in my mind. While I'm there, I decided I haven't bought a new chain for my 271 in I think 6 years. So I think I've got pretty good use out of it. And I was having trouble getting it, it would cut, but not bite. And you sawers will know what I mean. And even when I filed down the drag teeth, it was just, my chain was getting pretty well done. So I go to my local steel dealership, which is also a John Deere dealership, by the way. And while I'm there, I see the price of new saws. The 271, just like I bought it new at $399.95, $400. Now the thing is $479.90, so $480. By the time you pay tax, you're over $500. I didn't look at the 211s, but you're talking about the upper $300. But you know, I've got saws. I don't need those. But the saws I did want to look at were the Steel brand top handle saws. And to my shock and amazement, we were not talking about $400 or $500, not even $600. They were $640 and $660 and $695. I mean, ridiculous prices for a saw that is much smaller. Now, I get it. Technology comes at a premium when you're getting that compact size saw. Anyway, I come home and I get on the internet and I found a number of Chinese-made top handle saws that were in the $150 range. Well, that was interesting, but it wasn't that interesting. And then I saw one that was on a special for $100, and then eBay, for some reason, had a coupon that allowed me to get another $20 off. So, here it is. This is a Chinese brand. I don't even think they have a name, but we'll look at it to see. But I looked at a number of video reviews of this thing, and people seemed fairly pleased. It's not a $600 saw, but because you use it so sparingly and so specifically, almost each one of the people were convinced that even if the saw didn't last that long, they would buy another one because they could buy 5 of these things for the price of one professional grade saw. So what I wanted to do today is to give you something that I've almost never do, and that's a video on opening and first impressions. I am not a professional in terms of I don't do tree jobs for people. I cut firewood, so you're looking at an average person's use, a homeowner use, and I'm excited to see what this thing's going to do. So you get to see, I wanted to open this thing so badly yesterday. The delivery man brought it late in the day, and I was done for this kind of thing. So I said, I'll wait and do an unboxing here for you. There's another box inside the main box, and I'm going to slide it out. But It won't let me. There we go. Try not to destroy my boxes because there's so many other times that you need it. So right off the bat, this is a 16-inch, no, I'm sorry, this is a 12-inch saw. So your blade, Neotec, that's the name, I had forgotten it. Neotec, you can see it there, comes with a sheath for the blade, instruction manual, a tool bag, and we'll open that in just a minute. One of the things I liked about it, this saw requires a 25-to-1 oil to fuel mix. 25 gas, 1 part oil. There's the chain. And I run 50-to-1 with my steel products. But this actually comes with a mixing canister. So I don't have to go and buy another 1 or 2 gallon jug to mix separate fuel. And there it is. Nothing else here. So the Neotec chainsaw, I'm going to change the angle of the camera so you can actually see a little further down here. There's the Neotec saw. Now, it is a little bit of what I would call an older style technology. You have your choke, which is just a little plastic rod that reaches down to the carburetor inside the air housing here. It has a priming bulb there, and if you'll notice, there's an on-off rocker switch right on the handguard, so it's very convenient for the size of my thumbs. It has a blade safety system, and then you have gas in the top, your oil mixture in the bottom. Now, the gas tank is extremely small, but again, this is not a saw for cutting truckloads of wood. This is a saw for limbing up and trimming, especially when you will have to be extending your arms. So right off the bat, I like the feel of it. I also notice with most modern saws, your muffler is in the front of the saw, which is not a bad thing. It keeps the keeps it easier to carry and not burn your leg. But with this saw, your muffler's down here. So the exhaust port works more like an older saw. A 2-bolt setup on the clutch cover and a typical tension adjustment screw right there. Now off the bat, that screw, which is, it's got 4 slots, but it's not Phillips head. It's 2 flat heads that are right angles to each other, so you get to it quicker. However, that screw looks to be plastic. It's probably nylon, so we'll look at that in just a minute. The chain is a 3/8 inch chain. Well, it helps if you open it from the right end, not the back end. Gotta do it with my knife. Pull it apart there, but so there's our chain. Chain is respectably sharp. We'll see how that holds up. But I wanted to see our toolkit. Extra screws. It does have a rat tail file here. Comes in a little plastic sheath. Those are your gripping, we always called them log dogs, but just your teeth. And I don't know if for this particular saw, that would be advantageous, or if I would just lose an extra little bit in the length of the blade, but we'll see. Hex head T-handles, 2 of them. I was looking to see if they're labeled, and they're not. A little flathead screwdriver, and of course your tensioner tool that with a spark plug wrench, and it has a Phillips head on it, so that's for that slotted, double slotted screw. I guess I should call it a Phillips head. It just doesn't look like the typical Phillips head. Let's go ahead and take, wrong side, our clutch cover loose. I noticed that the chain brake is completely mounted to the clutch cover, so all of that's going to come off together. I can see the sweat starting to bleed through on my shirt down here, but I'm always a little bit slow here to pull on something until I'm accustomed to what holds on to what. Just have to wiggle it a little more. I can see it sliding off now. There we go. So you've got your chain brake, which attaches to the clutch mechanism. There is your tensioning screw, and a little touch of oil here and there, but it's not covered up in oil. Typical clutch assembly, which I will not disassemble. I've said on my site that advice from a non-professional to non-professionals. Here's a bit of non-professional advice. If you don't know how to fix it, don't take it apart. But a very typical setup, it looks to me. Little dust on one end of this. I'm looking for... This is a little bit strange because the tensioner, and this is not unique to this, the tensioner being attached to the clutch cover, there's really nothing here to hold your saw where you want it until you add the clutch cover. While I'm putting this together, I'll tell you a little story. Last year I was cutting some hickory over in town, one of those old part of town houses with huge tree, and the young man who owned the house was from California. Moved to the East Coast, which well, it is what it is. He was a good fella, don't get me wrong, but he was a fella who did not have experience with cutting up tree, which is why he asked somebody else to do it. So while we were there was me and one other gentleman who were cutting on this tree, and both of us were comparing our saws. We both had steels, and this gentleman also had a steel. He had one of the very smallest, like a 170, I think. The old 17 was the old model. And he said, you know, I'm having trouble getting my saw sharpened. And I may have told this on another video now that I think about it, but you'll hear it again. So he asked if one of us would be willing to sharpen the saw for him. So I said, sure, man, just bring it on out. And he brought it out, and I said, well, the first thing I noticed, his saw had a different pitch than the files I had. So I said, I can't sharpen this. He said, well, I've got a file. So he runs back in the house, and while he's running back in the house, I looked a little closer, and I began to just laugh almost uncontrollably, because what had happened is he had put his chain on backwards. So the cutting edge was facing the back of the saw instead of the front of the saw. And he came out, and I said, I believe I've got your saw cutting. I had switched it all while he was looking for his looking for his file. And he was quite chagrined. I have to see where this thing, I'm gonna have to come back a little bit. I'm fighting a shadow here. When you have a new saw with a brand new chain, your initial install can be a fairly tight, because new chains have a tendency to stretch. Not only that, I don't mean for this to sound prejudiced, but some of the Chinese stuff is not the metal's not the best stuff that's ever been. Okay, it slid into place there. There's a minimum amount of play in the bar, which it varies from saw to saw, but the way this one is put together, the bar does not have much play. All right, I just barely snuggled it, checking my tension. I'm going to tighten it up. Now, I can pull that loose, but I'm having to pull on it. I don't want to go any tighter than that, again, because there are some plastic parts here, and I don't want to over tighten the thing. I see I've made a mistake. This saw does not connect exactly like most of my other saws. I've even got my dad's old pole in. And see what happened? There is a little plastic lug that has to be threaded in first. So now I've got to loosen all this back up. I'm not impressed with that particular feature. But you live and you learn. So it has to come all the way off. And you actually thread it on from the back. All right, let's see where my... I'm going to have to get a flashlight. I just need to loosen it just a hair more. Get in there. There we go. All right, check and see if it is seated properly. I usually don't like to pull on a chain unless I have gloves on, but I'm trying to make sure it's in the groove. And it's not. Down here under the clutch cover. All right, there we go. Get it tight enough that I can put my nuts on here. Now, I do see one advantage to this rear lug setup. I'm able to put the chain and actually partially tension it without it sliding off, which, you know, it's not a major thing. All right, we've got our little saw. Ooh, that's maybe a little tighter than I want it. There, it's locked. It is quite tight. Let me back him off just a hair. One thing I did not do that I probably should have is put some grease on that sprocket. Put some motor oil on it first. I knew that's going to bite me here. I just happen to have one of the most useless pieces of chainsaw thing, equipment or accessories around, old-fashioned grease applicator that literally all you have is a plunger in here that is smaller than the tube, so you have to get and push some grease into this tube here. But it actually works. I do not like the feel of that, so I am actually going to loosen this a little more than I normally would on a, all right, that's as loose as it needs to be. I'm going to put a little bit on this all the way around the bar. Just so that the initial movement has some lubrication. All right, our little saw has gone together very easily with just the minimum alterations. These two screws are for the log dog here, so I'm going to put those back into our little handy dandy toolkit. And what I'm going to do, I guess it would be advantageous or wise. Well, that's tight too. I'm going to take the rear cover off. There we go. It's pitiful to get old and weak. I'm going to look at the air filter setup. One thing I will tell you, if you go for this type of saw, and there are a number of saws that are all Chinese and they look to be almost identical, but I noticed in one of the earlier reviews I saw, when a guy disassembled this thing, you got a standard cleanable air filter, and down here is your spark plug, so you got to take this off. But your choke lever can actually fall out of this thing, so you need to be really careful when you disassemble it. And you also have a metal ring here for a lanyard if you're actually going to be climbing. I don't mind climbing as long as I can keep one foot on the ground. So that'll tell you how much I will need the lanyard itself. And the back of your cover here, you'll notice there's a compression plastic ring around the actually threaded nut that goes onto this thing. Now what you have here, you see this little accordion looking thing. You got your air intake here around the recoil spring. And what that is just a chute that goes into the bottom of the air filter system. So to right here, you could get quite a bit of debris in here. So be sure you keep your air filter system maintained properly. There we go. And sure as I was telling you, that choke assembly, which is held on with a little rubber grommet, the little rubber grommet had slid back. I just don't feel like this thing is going on exactly straight. Yeah, it's an $80. There we go. My bad. I didn't have it lined up. The saw's a pretty little saw. It says it creates 113 decibels of noise, so certainly you want to keep your hearing protection. But just pulling things apart and putting it back together, it doesn't have the same exact feel of quality that a steel has. However, it does not feel nearly as cheap as some saws that I've had. So I'm going to cut off the video here, and I'm going to mix up some fuel, and I've got to go out to the truck and get my bar oil, and we will come back and see if we can get this thing started. I'll probably do the next segment outside. So hang with me and we'll be right back. All right, I read the manual a little bit. And it said for the bar oil to use 1030 motor oil, so I went down to the building there and found some 1030, and I mixed up my 25 to 1 instead of the normal 50 to 1. And yeah, I added just a touch more oil, especially for this first tank full. I want that piston to have plenty of lubrication. So there is a retaining thread on the cap. I also put, and I do this with all my fuel, where I live, the majority of the fuel is ethanol. What I'm looking to do here is to see if the case is translucent enough to see, and it is. I can see the level of gas in it, so I really do like that. Close this before a gnat goes in it. We have so many gnats in this area. noticed that the cap, and I'm doing it left-handed. I don't know if that's going to make a difference, but the cap does not just want to thread naturally. There we go. Well, I thought it had gone. And this is aggravating. But I got it. I'm seeing some of the epoxy where the other tank is glued in place. And the oil tank, like the gas, is translucent. So I can see when I get to the top. I almost overfilled it. You really, that one started easily, but I had to just push it down a little further. Bear right with me. I'm going to go get a towel. I grabbed a pair of gloves while I was at it. Now, I'm not going to saw in this particular segment because when I came in earlier, I put on short pants. But we are going to try it live. I'm going to start the priming bulb process. I've pressed it 10 times and don't see any fuel yet. Still don't see any fuel. All right, we're back. It's a day later from the earlier segment, and we're back to look at our little saw. Let me catch you up on what went on yesterday. You saw I couldn't crank the saw. And I noted that the priming bulb was not picking up any fuel, so I was not getting any fuel to the system. So I went inside and emailed the seller, who was an eBay seller. I'm in Virginia, he's in California, so didn't know what to expect. Just said, look, I know what I'm doing with the saw, so the saw's not running. And he emailed back. I got an email this morning at like 5:30. And he said, I've run into this before, and it's usually a problem with a pinched fuel line. So check the fuel lines to see if they're pinched. Now, I do a lot of sawing, but I've got to be honest, I am not a saw mechanic. So you have heard the extent of the instructions that I had. But to be fair, I'm like, how hard can it be? So I did more than I needed to. So I'm going to show you what I needed to do. And let me get the camera here. Right here is the priming bulb. And if you can see as I shake it, it's got fuel in it. But when he tells me to check the fuel line, I took the entire recoil spring side cover off. You don't need to do that. This top panel, if you buy one of these saws, there's a screw here and a screw up here. This top panel comes off, and then there's a looks like a mica type sheet of insulation that lays on top of the fuel lines. So the fuel lines came, and I simply took them and wiggled them, and I pressed the bulb and I heard it suck fuel. So it was just a matter that it was laying in such a way, there's only this much space under there, and the panel was evidently squeezing the fuel line. So I replaced it, put it back in, and I was still getting fuel. So I put the thing back together. Now let's go outside. I am nasty. I have been splitting wood this morning and stacking wood, so It's gotten hot on me. This is another one of those 90-degree days. But let me get you seated here. We're in the direct sunlight. And literally push the button. Ha! And just that quickly, the saw started. This saw is very easy to put together with the chain actually not in the groove. So when I first cranked it, I noticed that it was in a bind, and I just checked and it was out of the groove on the bar. So I adjusted that, but I'm trying to figure out what I need to hit to test this. One of the things I'm going to be doing with this little saw, besides going with me when I go to the woods, is limbing up some of these pines. Let me go up here to this one, up near the road. Now my tripod is every bit of 8 inches tall, so I'm going to have to put you down pretty low. And I'm just going to knock off a couple of these branches and let you see if the saw operates as it should. Now, you've seen a 30-second test. And I know you can't see me, but I'm hot. In this 30-second test, the little saw shows me a couple of things. Number one, it has sufficient power. Especially with a 12-inch blade, I'm not pulling as much chain, so it doesn't take as much power. For the purpose that it's designed and the purpose that I'm going to use it for, limbing up, that's plenty of blade or bar, plenty of power, and it is very easy for me to manipulate the saw with one hand. The saw does have a chain brake that does work. I've tested that. I'll show you. So the chain brake works, the saw is nimble. I think it's going to be a pretty handy thing to have. So I don't have a job right here in front of me to do a proper, 2 or 3 tanks of gas through this thing. But out of the box, once we got past the crimped fuel line, the pinched fuel line, the little saw cranked immediately. Even with the higher oil content, it does not smoke to any degree that you would not expect any other saw. It is responsive, and time alone will tell if it holds up to be worth the investment that I have in it. Now, I told you I got this saw for $80. There was a $20 off coupon. It was a limited time coupon on eBay. So when I went back and emailed the seller and I checked the listing, I saw that that coupon was already gone. But you can still find this saw at this time, and this is July of 2024. I'm sorry, June of 2024. You still find this saw on eBay for $100, and I think it's $104. It's on Amazon for about $150 odd. I forget what the exact price is. One of the things that I expect that I will do with this saw is I will actually go to my steel dealership and I'll get a chain that's a little bit higher quality, but at this point, this chain is doing exactly what I need it to do. So there's our review of the Neotec Chinese-made 2-cycle 12-inch top handle saw. And time will tell. I'll do a follow-up here when I've used it in the field a little bit more, and we'll see what it's like. I'm the Bald Guy. I hope you'll leave us a like. I hope that you'll subscribe to the channel. I hope that I can pick you up. And I hope that you're having a wonderful day. It's hot here. And like you say, I've already been outside. And I'm going to go in and clean up. I've got some other things to do in a different field of work. And I'll see you on the next video.